Scott Drew's family have gone to Lexington on the private plane owned by one of Kentucky's biggest boosters, and it feels like the decision is in their hands now. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. The saga continues with Scott Drew and Kentucky, and I will own up to this. Full disclosure, guys, I have had to re-record this whole first segment. And if you can't tell, I'm exhausted. We all are. There's been a lot going on today. The first segment originally of today's show was what you saw on the YouTube channel last night about the tweet. We all know about that by now, but we had late developing news here at the top of the 10 o'clock news here in Central Texas. Great journalism work by Darby Brown, once again, who in both segments gets huge credit. Darby Brown of Channel 10 here in Waco had the video of the plane owned by Joe Kraft, one of the big donors at Kentucky, who has the practice facility named after him in Lexington. His private plane landing in Temple, not in Waco. Almost a brilliant move. Almost fooled everybody. Landing in Temple, for you Kentucky fans, is about 45 minutes south of Waco. And Darby had the video with Scott Drew's family getting off that plane. She had mentioned that it had come to Temple in the morning, stopped for about 20 minutes, came back at about 7:30 at night with Drew's family coming off. So all we can think is that the rest of Scott Drew's family got to go and get the tour and see what Lexington and UK was all about. I know Scott's been there before. They were the first team to beat Calipari in Rupp Arena back in 2012, so he has seen it. But this feels very disheartening. It does, because the big victory of the Mi Casita tweet is that he was not in Lexington, right? So that eliminates that he was interviewing for the job that day, like some others had reported. And now, I mean, we know that he didn't go there and interview for the job, but his family went and saw it. And it was members of his immediate family went out there and saw it. And I'm sure Scott can get an offer over a phone call. It feels like we have entered the danger zone here. It really does. It's as close to 50-50, if not leaning more towards Kentucky than it's ever been. And it's bizarre, I think, that from what we can tell, Scott stayed here in Waco and the rest of his family went out there. I guess this is like the Dan Hurley thing. You gotta sell his wife on it. But it was tough news to see if you're trying to get Scott Drew to stay at Baylor. And I'm going to refrain from fully lashing out on this because I want to hear more. I want to hear what his side of the story is. But initial reaction is I now really don't like the tweet from lunchtime. I think it really rubs me the wrong way. If he put that out knowing that his family was in Lexington and he was trying to get us off the scent. I don't love that at all. But obviously we know Scott enough to know that you do have to sell his family on it. You know, a lot of coaches just say that just to say that, but I think Scott really takes that to heart. Because it's a massive move for them too. Again, like these things do come into play. His daughter goes to Baylor. They've been working on a new house here in Waco for like the last 2 years. So like that's a major investment, no matter how much money you're making. But this feels like the end. It does. It feels like it's over. But I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, Baylor fans, I'll give it to you. I guess you can have the silver lining of the family goes out there and they're probably not taking a lot of basketball into account. if you send Scott Drew out there, you send any college basketball fan out there, and they're going to be smitten, right? They're going to see it's Kentucky. It's as big as a program as everyone says it is. It's a 20,000 seat arena. You got all these national championship banners. The place bleeds Kentucky basketball, But if you put your family out there who don't care as much about the basketball. In fact, I would go as far as saying Scott Drew's family probably cares very little about the basketball. They care about all the things around it. They care about their home, the town they're going to live in, how the fans will treat them during good times and bad. And so I guess I'm hoping that silver lining is they went out there and hopefully they weren't all that impressed with it, but I've heard only great things about Lexington, like genuinely, from any fan base. They say it's a great town. So this feels pretty close to a death blow. Credit to Darby. She was the only one who had this. We had people we heard about people on the ground at TV cameras in Lexington that didn't capture anything. And we were all looking at flight tracks in Waco, and they tripped us up by going to Temple, and Darby went down there and she had the video. It's on KWTX channel 10. She did have to blur out the family's faces. They were requesting privacy. But she does have, their torso and their lower half coming off the plane. And she was able to confirm that was Scott Drew's family. So interesting move. Just the family out there, not Scott. Or Scott snuck out there at some other time that we didn't know about. Maybe he's driving through the night right now. I don't know. But this day certainly got tipped on its head. I mean, this has been chaotic. This has been hour by hour, something new. And I think earlier Wednesday was the first time Baylor fans could feel okay seeing that picture. Like I mentioned in that video that was originally this segment, but you can see it on YouTube. I felt good. I felt maybe there's some naivete there, but here he is supposed to be in Lexington, but he's out in Waco posting about it, wearing Baylor basketball stuff. That's just not something you do when you're hours away from taking another job. But that could well be the case. I mean, and if Scott Drew's family is out there, and we have not heard, there was one report that he had gotten offered the job. No other reporter had that. Just one guy from a paper in Lexington had that. Nobody else did. And so I'm thinking, okay, they've just contacted him. That's the only thing we can confirm. But now, if you're sending a family out there, that means there's an offer. That means they want you. Why else would you send a family out there except to check out the town and make the final decision? So hopefully that family, that Drew family, just bleeds green and gold enough to keep him here in Waco. But I'm telling you, we are teetering on the brink. I imagine we're going to have the answer Thursday. Family meeting tonight, maybe sleep on it, a lot of prayer, but I think we're going to have a decision whether Scott is staying or going here in the next day, in the next 24 hours at the most. So that's the latest update we have here on Wednesday night, is that the family Drew was flown out there by the University of Kentucky, or at least by one of their biggest donors, to go out to Lexington, check out the lay of the land, and report back to Scott. And this is a family decision for them. So we're just going to have to see probably Thursday, but we still got the rest of the show here. We'll talk about whether Scott Drew's a real fit for this job, and a Baylor superstar is heading off to the NBA in another big Baylor basketball news today. So that's what we got coming up. We know there's so many sports going on right now, y'all, and y'all want to get to the ballpark. You want to get to the arena. There's so much going on, and the only place to go and buy your tickets is through Gametime. Buying tickets these days It's a horrendous experience if you don't use Gametime. You got the hidden fees, they double the price, you don't get to see where you're at. Sometimes you could get fooled and get fake tickets. Not the case at Gametime. Okay, you go on the website, what you see right away is basically what you get. You got the all-in pricing. It's going to show you with the fees included, here's what it's going to cost. You know what it's going to cost. You know what your seat view is, your angle is going to be from your seat before you ever hit purchase. They also have these zone deals. So throughout the week, if you're looking at a ticket for a ball game on the weekend and you're monitoring it throughout the week, they'll have like flash deals in certain zones of the park or of the stadium or wherever it may be. And you can actually go and find a deal just by looking and keeping up with it. No promo code required for that. And it's also got the lowest price guarantee. So if you find another ticket website that has the tickets you want, same row, same section, that is cheaper than Gametime, Gametime will make it up to you and will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered for the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. And download the Gametime app today because last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And so we've heard a lot. We've heard mixed kind of results from Kentucky fans on whether they want Scott Drew or not. The overwhelming majority in the comment section of these videos and on Twitter are saying they don't want him. And look, I get it. Not an entire fan base is not categorized from the people you see on Twitter or in the YouTube comments. A lot of those people are crazy, myself included sometimes. So, it's you can't get the full pulse of that. But everyone I talk to who's kind of covering this situation from the Kentucky side seems to agree. They're like, we like Scott Drew. We don't think that's a bad choice, but a lot of Kentucky fans see it as settling. They don't know who he is. And mainly, they don't think he can handle the job. Something I'm seeing a lot is he's not the right fit. He's not the Kentucky fit. And I'm curious as to what that fit is, quite frankly, because Scott Drew is an incredible basketball coach. And I think a deserved Hall of Famer. Again, I know we don't need to rehash this, but I will anyway, because it's been 20 years plus at Baylor, and it's the best turnaround in the history of college basketball. Like, he comes in here amidst one of the worst scandals in college basketball history. I mean, a player murdering his teammate and the coach trying to make him out to the murdered guy made out to be a drug dealer, and still sticks to that to this day, which is insane. He's an insane person, Dave Bliss. And, they have nobody on scholarship. Nobody wants to touch this job. It's the third rail of college basketball. Scott Drew comes in, trusts the process, and ends up bringing them to a national championship. There's only like 4 or 5, I think it's 5 or 6 active head coaches who have a national championship. And Scott Drew is one of them. So right away, if that's not a fit for your program, then what are we doing? I get it. I know you're Kentucky. I know. But again, if you're looking for a championship head coach, it can't just be Dan Hurley or bust. I know he's the hottest guy in the market, but there are very few guys coaching in college basketball right now that say, I have a national championship ring. And Scott Drew is one of them. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing from Kentucky fans is the fit, meaning he doesn't have the bravado, the brashness, maybe the ego to coach at Kentucky. And I'm like, okay, fine. If that's what you're looking for, Scott Drew is not it. Not it. There's this notion, and I did see this in a tweet, that he's a reserved guy that won't fit at Kentucky. And I'm like, well, Scott Drew's not reserved. Not by any stretch. He's jovial. He's very outgoing. But he's not your kind of outgoing. He's not, I'll refrain from saying the words I think about some of those old Kentucky coaches, but he doesn't have the brashness that they're looking for. John Calipari did. Rick Pitino definitely did. And I'm thinking, are these the guys that you're looking for? Are these like the only two that can fit your criteria? Because both great coaches and have baggage that come with them. And if that's what you're looking for, okay. Rick Pitino is coaching right now. Go and call him up. He'll leave St. John's for Kentucky. In fact, weirdly enough, he said in an interview like a month or two ago, he wished he had never left Kentucky. Go and make his dream come true. Go and get him. Please your fans. Know the baggage that's coming with him, and we'll all move on with our lives. But it seems like Mitch Barnhart is looking for the best basketball coach available, no matter what he says in press conferences, no matter how he prays before a game, no matter how much hair gel he puts in his hair. And like, that might well be Scott Drew then. But he's not a fit, because he doesn't have scandals attached to him. He hasn't had to vacate any Final Four trips. Then that means he's not a fit. You know what? If that's what you're looking for, A, you can still go after Rick Pitino, or B, go get Sean Miller. Remember him? Arizona, Xavier before that, now back at Xavier. That guy knows how to win, and he's pretty slimy too. If that's what you're looking for, because that's what it seems to be. They love Calipari and love Pitino. Again, great coaches, but a lot attached to them, and a lot of vacated wins attached to them. Both of them, between the two of them, Calipari and Pitino, they have 3 Final Four trips that never happened, that the schools don't own those Final Four trophies. Yeah. Okay, if that's what you want, I'll give you the next best thing. Sean Miller hasn't been to a Final Four, but best believe if he ever did, that thing would get vacated. Go for him, man. That's as slimy as you'll get in today's college basketball, active head coaches. Go and get him and have Will Wade as a backup. Best thing for you guys at Kentucky, that stuff's not even cheating anymore, really. Just although what Sean Miller was doing might still be. So if you want that, go right ahead, man. Those guys know how to cheat and win with the best of them. Take them. But if you're looking for the slimy dirtball, quote unquote, fit that would fit those guys that you're talking about, Scott Drew is not it. Don't take him. Go for somebody else. But I think Mitch Barnhart, and I hate to give him credit because I hope he doesn't take Scott Drew. I think he's actually thinking of this with a level head of let's go out there and get the best basketball coach. And the only one I think that could, Bruce Pearl's got plenty of violations attached to him too. He's still potentially on the board. The only one that I think would fit the fit of what you're looking for and isn't totally slimy is Dan Hurley. Because he does have a different personality than Scott Drew. He is very intense. He is brash. He is cocky. He backs it up. And he is a fun guy to rally behind if he is your coach, and one that I think is, if he's not already on your nerves as a college basketball fan of somewhere else, he will be very, very soon. I love his bravado. I love it. And I think that would be what Kentucky would want. But again, this is where you'll learn the lesson that you can't get anything that you want. I wish you'd take Dan Hurley too, but I don't think Dan's going to do it. I mean, he is at one of the top 10 jobs in college basketball, maybe a top 5 job in college basketball. He's already there. And he's won the national championship the last 2 years. And he's at the best. He's a Northeast guy through and through. And he is at the number 1 college sports job in the Northeast. For those of you who aren't from the Northeast like I am, unless you care about hockey, in terms of revenue sports, there is no one sport that stands out in New England or in the Northeast. There's one program that stands out of all those sports, and it's UConn basketball. And he's already there. He's got it. So I can't see him making that jump, but The only other great example you have of that from history is Rick Pitino going to Kentucky. So there is some precedent there. Maybe. Go out and get Dan Hurley if you can. And if not, go out and get Rick Pitino. But if you're worried about a fit and you're worried about a guy being too nice, then yeah, Scott Drew's not your guy. And we will gladly keep him here and hopefully make some deep runs in March again, because it's not a guarantee really at either school right now. Today's episode of Locked On Baylor is also brought to you by FanDuel. I mentioned it is like the best time of the year for sports, truly. I mean, these next 2 months of playoffs are going to be fantastic. Plus, baseball's in full swing. You got a coaching carousel. You got the Masters this weekend. It's true. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. So you can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for, man? Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And here we were all day waiting around for the massive Baylor basketball news. And for most of the day, it looked like we weren't going to get much of anything. And then Yves Missi decided, I'll give you your headline, because on Wednesday afternoon, Baylor freshman sensation Yves Missi decided to declare for the 2024 NBA draft. He is hiring an agent. He is all in. That means he is not coming back. Also in today's news, Caleb Lohner entered the transfer portal, and I didn't make that a whole segment because it's not terribly surprising. He did do the senior day festivities. He might well declare for the NBA as well, but it's not surprising. He did 2 years at Baylor. He'll probably do a year somewhere else, similar to what Matthew Meyer did. But Yves Missi has decided to go into the NBA draft, and he is a projected first-round pick. Jonathan Giovanni. I've actually never heard his name said out loud. He is an excellent reporter with ESPN. He was the one who had the story today. Missi did tell him through a text message that he isn't not only entering the draft, but like I said, hiring an agent as well. And one thing I thought was interesting, he said, this is a direct quote from Missi: NBA teams will be able to see in the pre-draft process how fast I'm learning, especially since I'm new to the game. They will see my ability to shoot and ball handling, which is something they didn't necessarily see much of this year. I don't think that was a shot at Baylor or anything, but I hope he's right. I hope there is some shooting and ball handling there that can translate to the next level, because right now I think Yves is a terrific prospect, but it is a bit of a project. But just seeing how much he grew in his game this year in one season in college was just tremendous, to the point where I'm thinking, I mean, by his second year in the league, he's going to have most of it figured out, because he just learns that quickly. He's a guy who hasn't been playing college basketball all that long, only 3 or 4 years here. He's a guy who's, again, still supposed to be in high school. We're supposed to be talking about him coming to Baylor next year, not him going into the NBA draft. But he impressed that much. I mean, he is a legit rim protector, I think, for years to come, averaged 11.6 rebounds, 2 blocks. You see that, and you're like, that's a lottery pick. But if you watched his games, you would say, yeah, that's a lottery pick. No problem. He was on the all-freshman team in the Big 12, all-defensive team in the Big 12. He led the conference in dunks for 63 and third in blocks with 51. So that tells me my man can play above the rim. And you see that when you watch his games. I mean, he is one of the greatest athletes that has played under Scott Drew. I think the best, most athletic center or big man that Scott Drew's ever had, and he's had some pretty good ones. And some of those guys were better overall players, but Yves is the most athletic for sure. And he just did things that a lot of centers in college basketball can't do, and certainly ones that have played for Baylor over the years weren't able to do. I mean, he's talking about seeing more of his ball handling. He was able to put the ball on the deck from the free throw line and get to the basket against some of the best centers in college basketball. I mean, again, some of his best games were against Hunter Dickinson, Janai Broome, Kyle Filipowski, like real legit centers that he was torching, and he was out physicaling them and getting to the rim. And he is certainly a mouth-watering prospect when you actually go and see him play. I know there's question marks about the shooting, and of course, no matter what, we weren't going to see much of that with the way that Baylor ran offense. And there will be some questions about his durability. He's still got some pounds to fill out, and he only played 23 minutes a game, so there will be a lot to look at there. But I can't say enough just the growth that this kid had in 1 year. He comes in, again, a year early. It's a fascinating timeline, really, with him at Baylor, because it looked like he was going to go to Texas. It was really, those were the last two, Baylor and UT, and it looked like he was nailed on at UT, and then Chris Beard unceremoniously left the program. And then things changed, and Baylor swooped in, and they were able to get that commitment. And then he reclassifies, so you get him a year early, and basically immediately, the second game, not the first game, slots into your starting lineup at center. And the athleticism, again, was just off the charts from the beginning, and he really polished into a full-on basketball player, because I think a lot of us thought, here's a raw guy, probably not going to leave after 1 year because he's got a lot to learn, and we've seen it from bigs in the past at Baylor. And then I remember Rothstein put out a tweet in like September or October that said, hearing from my sources in Waco that Yves Missi is going to surprise a lot of people. And I remember being like, he's like a 4-star, 5-star guy. If he's surprising us, does that mean he's going to be bad? Or like, there's no way he's going to be that polished as a freshman, right? Like, this kid's still supposed to be in high school and he's barely played basketball. But I was wrong. He proved that he was a polished basketball player, a polished big man against, again, some of the best bigs and in the best conference in the country. He was outstanding. Looking at some of the early mock drafts, they have him just outside the lottery, a top 20 pick mostly, but just took the temperature of a couple of these sites. CBS has him going at number 17 to Toronto. SI has him at number 18 to Atlanta. USA Today, number 19 to Cleveland. And Bleacher Report, which was all over the place, like everyone was way off. They have him at 26 to Washington, behind Johnny Furphy, and they had Jacoby Walter dropping a bunch too to about 20, which I'm not seeing it on any of the other mock drafts. Of course, those things change when you get closer to draft time, and Yves will be one of those guys that really impresses in his pre-draft workouts, because his measurables are off the charts, man, which sounds like an oxymoron, but he is just an insane athlete, and he will be an even more polished player just in those workouts in the next month than he was at the end of the basketball season, because that's how quickly he is picking these things up. And so if he does drop into the 20s, there's going to be buyer's remorse. It's a warning to those who aren't picking him higher. As if he goes to a playoff team and he can work in as a rotational guy who might have some G League time, but I think he is going to be a contributor next year if he's going to a playoff team, because if you're a lottery team or you're a real tank team, he might get some playing time, but he's going to be buried. They're going to be losing. Whereas he can, on a contender, give you some things that you need to fill out your roster right away and learn the well-rounded game on the fly. So I think Yves Missi is going to be a tremendous pickup for someone, especially if he's going in the 20s, the first round. But we'll, of course, talk about his draft prospects as the draft gets closer. Boy, I hope he falls to the Celtics, but I doubt that'll happen. Best of luck, of course, to Yves. This is an accomplishment. It's not something that we can be like, darn. I wish he would have come back for a second year, but that was always a long shot. And I think he's going to make an NBA team very, very happy next year. Let me know what you think about Yves Missi, the draft decision, where you think he'll go, how quickly you'll think he'll take on this NBA game. Drop that down in the comments below. Also, drop down in the comments below what you thought of the selfie that broke the internet. What does that mean for Scott Drew, for Baylor, for Kentucky? What does it mean for those Kentucky fans that don't want him? Sound off down in the comment section below, and be sure to like and subscribe. We are your first listen today and every day. We're the only place that is giving you nothing but Baylor athletics content every single day of the week that's not coming straight from the university. So be sure to like and subscribe, tell a friend, get involved, and we'll be back tomorrow with your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.